Is it wrong to ask for anything that would be pleasant? Is he saying that? Well, I don't think we'd ask for very much then, because hardly anybody asks for pain. So that's not always wrong. But surely he doesn't mean that when he says, give us this day our daily bread, he means, and it must taste bad when you give it. He doesn't mean that. So what does he mean here? So that you may spend it on your pleasures. That's why you're not getting what you ask. Your motives are wrong. I think the next verses give us light on what's going on there. You adulteresses. Whew. Blue, doesn't it? You adulteress. Well, you say, whoa. I'm not an adulteress. I'm a man. How can I be an adulteress? You adulteress, do you not know that friendship with the world is hostility to God? Oh, it's an image you're talking about here. Yeah, it's an image. Well, what's the image? The world is your lover, so you're an adulteress. Friendship with the world is hostility to God, your husband. See the image? He calls them adulteresses, and then he unpacks the image for them. You've become a friend to the world. You've become hostile to your husband. Therefore, whoever wishes to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. Or do you think that the Scripture speaks to no purpose when it says, He, your husband, God, is jealous, jealously desires the Spirit which He has made to dwell in us? I don't think that should be capitalized. Here's what I think he's saying. You can't tell in Greek whether the Spirit is your spirit or God's Spirit. Here's what I think this image is trying to say. You're not supposed to love the world or the things that are in the world. The love of the world is not from the Father. You're supposed to love the Father, love the will of the Father. Love, or change father to husband. You're an adulteress because you're married to God and you're starting to go out and have affairs with the world. What's that got to do with prayer? That's what you're doing when you pray. Prayer is adultery. That's what verse 3 is saying. You ask and do not receive because you ask as an adulteress. What do you mean? Well, the picture I have in my head is this. Here's your bedroom, and your husband is in there, and he's asleep. And you stayed up to do something, and you're supposed to go get in bed with your husband and spend the night there. And instead, you go in there and you wake him up, and you say, can I have $100? Can I have $100? Sure. And he reaches over, gets his wallet, opens it up, gives you $100. He says, thank you, I'll see you in the morning. And you go down the hall and you pay your paramour and crawl into bed with him. You buy sex with the money that your husband gave you in answer to your prayer. That's the image here. So we come to God in prayer, not because we love God, not because we want His kingdom to advance, but because we want our $50 to go down and get what we really want. And that's why He says, in my image, He gave it to us, but here He says, you ask and do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. I think those pleasures mean pleasures at odds with God, pleasures that don't have God at the center of them, pleasures that are not received for God's sake and pursued for God's sake. This is a striking image. Adulteresses. You have a husband. You're supposed to ask your husband for things that will enhance the marriage. Don't ask him for things that jeopardize the marriage. Don't use prayer as a means of getting stuff that draw you away from God. Use prayer for things that will draw you toward God, toward your husband. When she's waking up, can I have $100? Yes. And you go out and you buy his favorite breakfast. Or you can go down and, I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here. You use that $100 for something that will enhance the relationship, deepen the relationship, strengthen the relationship. Don't use prayer as a way of satisfying non-God-centered desires. Now this is huge, and it's a very important thing to get worked out in your own head, because I think maybe the most important chapter in my book, Desiring God, is the chapter on prayer. I think it's probably the deepest and hardest chapter to understand, and the most important, because there I wrestled with, if God is to be our satisfaction, if God is to be our delight, if we're to say, whom have I in heaven but thee, and there is nothing on earth that I desire besides thee, well then, what am I supposed to feel about wife, children, food, ministry? I mean, all these things that are good things, I mean, I can't desire them, delight in them. That's what I wrestle with in that chapter. Because prayer is all about, why are you asking for a job? Why are you asking for a wife? Why are you asking for passing this test? Why are you asking for health? Why are you asking for your car not to break down? Why are you asking, what is all this horizontal idolatry? Or is it? See? You see the problem? Most people don't wrestle with that at all. Is prayer idolatry? Is it adultery or not? What keeps prayer from being adultery? Going to your husband, asking him to pay for what you really like. Food. And I got help from Augustine. He said this, and this quote is in Desiring God. He said, asking how desire for non-God relates to desire for God and whether it's idolatry or not, he said, this is a prayer now, He loves thee too little, who loves anything together with thee, which he loves not for thy sake. That's the best sentence I've ever read on that problem. You love God too little if you love anything together with God, which you love not for God's sake. So pizza, you love pizza? Pepsi? Sex? Success in business? Nice house? Marriage? Children? Ministry? Preaching? Teaching? You love any of that? Well, that might be okay, and it might be idolatry. What makes the difference? Do you love it for God's sake? And then you have to ask them, what does that mean, and how do I do that? Which is really asking for an exposition of 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatever you do, whether you eat pizza or drink Diet Pepsi, do all to the glory of God. And if you can't, it's idolatry. So, you got to learn how to drink orange juice to the glory of God.